Hi there, knife people. Hello, lady and gentlemen. This has been a year of MagnaCut 2024. This year, MagnaCut is everywhere. Is it an excellent steel or a marketing ploy? Debates are still raging on roughly 3 years after it's been released.
One thing, one thing the knife enthusiast community agrees on.
The key to MagnaCut is a heat treat. Also, this has been a year or two of constant bombardment emanating from knife retailers, big knife retailers, starting with Knife Center, continuing to Blade HQ, many others, reviewers of every sort of grain and sort, to carry fixed blades in the pocket as in a pocket fixed blade. I've been on the quest to find MagnaCut knives that actually fit the bill of the super steel designation, and B, looking for a pocket fixed blade that I can actually say, yes, this is the knife I could carry in my pocket and it will replace sort of everything except for the smallest folders to maybe over 4-inch fixed blades in my everyday and camping, hiking life. Finally, there is a knife out there which is not absolutely crazily priced that fits the bill.
Before I reveal the knife, I would like to show you a few other fixed blades that I tried carrying in my pocket, but for one reason or another, discarded the idea.
Starting with this Benchmade Intersect, and the name fits the bill here because they threw every possible marketable idea in a bucket, shook it, and then this knife came out. Then they followed it up with another fiasco, this Benchmade Audacian. You probably saw the video on how this happened. Let's just say that overall geometry design and potentially MagnaCut heat treat were to blame. And that's why I renamed it into Audacian. It's audacious. Then I got to review this wonderful knife, Boker Victig versus Wild. What a goofy name. The knife is not goofy. From ergonomic handle with easily removable screws and a hidden compartment to a perfectly heat-treated MagnaCut at 62.5, this was a great entry.
So much so that I even made a deep carry pocket sheath for it. But I found that full scandy grind is not ideal for completing EDC tasks.
And the weight of it is a little heavier than I would consider pocketable fixed blade. DCA from the Knife Center came out with MKM collaboration called Pocket Tango, mostly because it has a pocketable sheath with a magnetic clasp attachment, very similar to an old school holsters for small pistols that I've seen in the market 20 years ago. And, over time I got used to this sheath, although I don't think it's perfect. This knife, in case you haven't recognized it yet, came from White River.
Made entirely in the USA, it comes in this convenient cigar box.
It is accompanied by the certificate and an instructional card that shows you different carry configurations ranging from vertical to horizontal and everything in between. Unfortunately, I will not be trying out all these configurations because I simply don't care much for this sheath. What I care about, and you should probably sit down for this, they advertise 62 to 64 HRC on the certificate. That is a perfect range for MagnaCut blade. On this channel, the blade is the most important part of a review. So let's take a close look at this one. I forgot to mention there are several models of this knife based around the exact same blade, which has the cutting edge of 3 inches, basically identical to DCA's Pocket Tango, but much wider primary bevel and a complete lack of that NASMAC bump, for which I frankly couldn't find any use yet. You know what has an extremely similar blade shape is Benchmade Audacian. Oh, Benchmade, if only you applied an appropriate amount of jimpings in the right places like White River did here, not to mention properly heat treating the MagnaCut. Just don't buy this knife. Enough said about that. It's so bad. If you already own it, sell it.
The brand is not any more prestigious than White River.
And while it looks a little longer, it really isn't. Maybe a quarter inches, maybe 3/8, not worth the extra $100. And here I should probably mention that this knife is $169.95 on Knife Center in a variety of different handle colors. And then there is another model with a slightly thicker, more arguably ergonomic handle that is called Caper, which has the identical blade. And oh, by the way, the backpacker is available in S35VN steel, which I have no doubt White River heat treated to perfection as well. And speaking of heat treated, this is why I said as well. Here's my calibration block, which is hardened to 787 points on Lieb scale.
And now, in one uninterrupted shot, I will show you validation of how well this tester is calibrated, followed by 5 strikes on each side of the blade to give us a good idea of how hard this blade is.
With a 1 point error, I will not be recalibrating it because on a Lieb scale, 1 point equals about a tenth of a point on Rockwell scale. Not something I would be very concerned about. If you watch my hardness tests on a regular basis, you know that flatness of the tested blade is critical to the accuracy of the Lieb tester. And this one feels absolutely flat. So I'm applying this incompressible fluid, which is in this case a sanitizing gel, to absorb any kind of cavities that may exist between the blade and the block. And I'll be taking 5 measurements and then the tester will calculate the average. Typically, I throw away any outliers that exceed the core results by more than 3 sigma. Don't ask me to delve into the math. If you know what I mean, you know it, and if you don't, you don't care. I can do a separate video on that, but here you go, 63.7. And do you remember what the advertised range was? Of course you do. It was 62 to 64. So somehow they actually ended up on the high end of their already excellent range. I am continuing to the opposite side of the blade, and this feels totally flat. And I think it's because they do all their grinds, not just the primary and secondary bevel. I feel like they may be doing all their grinds after heat treat, which is very expensive comparing to grinding the flats pre-heat treat to save on manufacturing costs. Because you know, if you mess up the grind after heat treat, you just ate
the entire cost associated with heat treating that blade.
And we get 64. 64 spot on. You know, I have nothing else to say, nothing else to add to this finding. Actually, I can thank White River for putting a knife in my hand made by people who care about every little detail, even those that are not obvious to average knife user. The blade thickness is, what is it, in inches, 0.133 inches, so it's over an eighth of an inch. And that gives me a gut feeling that they bought steel at 5/32 of an inch, heat treated it, and then ground it flat to 0.133 dimension. Excellent. Let's put it on a microscope. Here's their logo, and here's the edge. As you can see, it has a little bit of convexity to it, indicating to me that it was hand ground on a belt sander, which sometimes leads to different width of secondary bevel near the tip. We can take a look at that in a second. Here you go. Let's flip it on the other side and take a look at this side of the tip. Sorry. Here you go. Basically, I don't see any asymmetry, neither at the tip nor on the straightaway, leading me to a conclusion again that they grind everything post heat treat, and absolutely expertly at that. I had this knife with me on a recent hike, and I actually couldn't resist cutting something, so I made me a little walking stick. So we're not looking at exactly the factory edge here. And I was cutting hardwood, so I don't expect it to cut paper towel, especially without putting any tension on it. And yet it gets in. It still gets in, but I'll be honest with you, it is not cutting to my satisfaction, and resharpening is in order. I promise I will. And that's why on a small blades I prefer flat secondary bevel because convex is reserved for knives used in tougher applications. And since I'm critiquing the knife, there are a couple more issues, two issues that I discovered that I'd like to address. Firstly, the hardware that holds scales to the handle is not captive. It is not a D-nut. And screws being T15s, I had to scramble and look for a proper driver bits to use two of them. White River being an avid outdoorsman's knife, what surprised me, they had no provisions for striking a ferro rod on the spine. The spine is crowned all around. So yeah, see when I try to use this magnesium-based ferro rod, I'm getting very low intensity sparks even at the gym. Prescription Dremel. 5 minutes later. As you can see, I deleted Jim's three cranulations and gave myself a very comfortable thumb rest, which does this. I hope you see the difference. Here you go. Look at it as removing stress concentration points, which every time jimping is applied, those cranulations accumulate stress. And it still fits just fine into the factory sheath.
Which is my least favorite part in this system.
It is very hard to please me with a factory made sheath, Kydex, leather, whichever. I think designers are totally not putting enough time into designing sheaths, which are an important part of the fixed blade knife system. So much so that this highly promoted by DCA sheath ended up dusting on a shelf. I just don't think his idea of pushing off with a finger really works. So much so I made a deep carry pocket sheath out of Kydex myself. I know it's not the prettiest sheath, but it's very practical. So when I was playing with the new knife here, I realized that it fits into DCA sheath, and the way it sits in there, it actually is a lot easier to extract it than the original knife for which the sheath was intended. And as you can see, the length is perfect. So when I went on my little hike, I used that sheath, and it broke in a little bit with this knife, and I'm actually considering continue to use it for a little while to see how it goes. And even more surprisingly, it actually fits into the Kydex sheath that I made for the Pocket Tango, and it sits there nice and deep, doesn't really lock in too badly.
All right, enough talk. Let's go do something fun.
Okay, after I broke that fake knife by Benchmade Kardashian on the street, I'm a little bit nervous testing the knife that I'm starting to really like. But tested I will, and I'm holding back on the first few strikes. Come on, man, hit it. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The tree is getting old, and I don't know how much longer I'll be able to do these demonstrations. But right now I'm striking it 25 times, and every time I hit a softer spot, I redo. So you'll probably count more than 30 strikes here, or right around 30. Okay, that was 25, and I'm ready to do what I did to the Dacian. Here you go. Hammer it in. And that's what broke the blade. I hammered it in, and as soon as I started wiggling it, it just broke right off. Whew, I can exhale now. No damage.
Fair warning to the knife companies. If you release a knife, fixed or folding, with tactical, outdoor, hunting, or camping in the name, I will test it with severity. Naming this
A
knife
backpacker, it grants a kind of test. So this piece of wood, as you saw, is about 2 inches. And I'm checking how the knife bites in. See if I can separate that chunky wood here. It's probably as big a piece as I would use a small knife like this on, but it got through reasonably well. I was experiencing a little bit of a bounce back into the handle. definitely see why they increased the thickness of the handle on the caper models, but I think they made scales non-removable, which is a puzzling development because, you know, hunters sometimes remove scales to wash the junk out of where it could sip into. This is definitely a capable knife, and ergonomics is decent. I am getting a little bit of a feedback into my left palm here where I hold the knife. Yet I can control it easily. I can extract it easily because of such a slim primary grind. It's a pretty stubborn piece of wood, but the knife said it doesn't want to give up, so I keep going. I feel like it's an excellent geometry for splitting wood because it gets in easily due to the acute primary grind, but then that has enough thickness at the top where the wood comes apart easier. I just finished sharpening the knife on this Xrilk Gen 3 fixed angle sharpener. This was literally the first knife I've sharpened
on this system. The device came with these three plates: 320, 800, and 2000 grits. And I felt like it's an insufficient spread, so I purchased a premium package with 180, 400, 800, 1500, 2000, and 3000 grids. And now I have duplicates of 800 and 2000s, but overall is a good spread, and I use that set to sharpen the knife.
The reason I'm telling you all this, I will provide links to all this materials in the description because I'm planning to do a series, like a season of videos about this sharpener. So if you enjoy my sharpening video content and would like to follow along step by step, or just looking for a kind of next level sharpening system for less than half the price of this Workshop Professional Precision Adjust, and even less expensive than Workshop Elite Precision Adjust. Everything you see on the table set me back $122, including this separately purchased angle finder. The set itself was $108. And how this sharpener performed speaks for itself. And if you use the links I provide, it will help the channel because I'm affiliated with Amazon. There are many different ways to demonstrate how sharp a knife is. And I saw a couple videos demonstrating hair whittling performance of a knife. I am follically challenged, so obtaining a long hair was not an option. Instead, I grabbed a 7-pound fishing line, the lightest gauge I have in my tackle box, and decided to try this. In my opinion, it would be easier to split human hair because human hair is made out of keratin platelets that give a nice place for the blade to catch, whereas the fishing line is completely smooth, forcing your blade to perform down there on a molecular level.